Kira's diary of her coats and jackets. Howdy, everyone, Kira called with a grin. A Canadian in Tilbury. Let the story begin. C'est moi, she exclaimed, feeling quite ecstatic. Her distinguished style was never erratic. With a dark brown bob and her glasses so neat, she was elated and exhilarated to walk down the street. She would maintain her fashion and retain every thread. Fortunately, she had plenty of ideas in her head. She didn't overlook details or overlook a good view, as she reiterated her itinerary, fresh and quite new. Monday was sunny, exemplary and bright, a current of energy, a shimmering sight. She donned a green jacket, fluorescent and bold, to adorn her frame as the morning unrolled. On her hot pink bike, she felt energetic and strong, enthusiastic to cycle and pedal along. She wore a thick helmet, lest a fall should occur, for to crack her head open would infuriate her. She reached the brink of the lakeside trail, where the standard of cycling would never, ever fail. By Tuesday, the weather was chilly and dismal. The monotony of gray was nearly abysmal. She took a long bus ride to Romford that day, in a black Harrington jacket, akin to decay. The garment was outdated, its beauty had waned, a lackluster shield that was notorious and stained. It was living on borrowed time, albeit quite tough, a juvenile style that was inadequate and rough. C'est la vie, she sighed, feeling slightly reluctant, as the tedious cold became rather reluctant. The jacket was marred by the passage of time, an appalling eyesore, past its fashion prime, with holes in the sleeves and a button existent no more. The atrocious fabric was rotten and sore. To exacerbate matters, the lining was sour, reminiscent of rags from a substandard hour. She didn't squabble or quarrel or bicker, though the demise of the tartan made her fury flicker. It was out of the question to maintain this wreck, an inferior coat that was a pain in the neck. On Wednesday, the air grew direr and cold, but Kira was vocal and remarkably bold. She wore a thick purple parka, spacious and wide, to evade the relentless wind far outside. To Benfleet she went, to a Jamaican friend's place, where Althea welcomed her with a smile on her face. The cacophony of music was loquacious and loud, as they engaged with the beat, away from the crowd. They didn't disengage or omit any fun until the exclusive party was finally done. But Thursday was horrendous. The rain started to fall, a pathetic fallacy felt by us all. The circumstances were inconsistent and variable, making the hiking feel nearly unbearable. She wore a purple waterproof, superior and sleek, but the peril of brambles made the prospect look bleak. The hiking trail was on the verge of a flood, as she hesitated near a heap of thick mud. Her itinerary was revocable, but she pushed ahead. "I'll not forfeit my journey," she insistently said. She slipped on a rock with a horrendous thud and landed quite inadvertently deep in the mud. The brambles had sabotaged the coat on her arm, obliterating its waterproof, precious charm. The unintentional damage was severe and quite deep. As she tumbled and slid down the treacherous steep, she felt crestfallen, inconsolable and distraught by the dilemma the erratic weather had brought. "Mon Dieu!" she cried out, on the brink of some tears, as her worst hiking omen confirmed all her fears. The jacket was a wreck, beyond any doubt. "It's out of bounds!" she was tempted to shout. She would not mention the mud or the stench of the day, as she intentionally threw the torn garment away. To salvage the fabric was out of the question. A rotten misfortune was her only suggestion. It would add insult to injury to try and repair a substandard coat that was beyond all care. She vacated the trail, feeling livid and irate, leaving the wrecked purple parka to its atrocious fate. The rain was incessant as Friday arrived, but Kira's great fashion had somehow survived. To Epping Forest Shopping Park, she made her way in her hot pink raincoat to brighten the day. It was indispensable, contrary to the gloom, like a distinguished flower beginning to bloom. The tedious monotony of rain didn't stop, but she was relentless as she started to shop. She didn't falter or wane or fade in the spacious boutiques where the bargains were made. On Saturday morning, the world was all white. A gradual snowfall had happened that night. Kira walked to the library in Tilbury Town, where the pristine white powder was settling down. She wore her hot pink winter coat, heavy and warm, to maintain her heat in the severe winter storm. The tetraphobia of winter was stuff and nonsense to her, as she wrapped herself up in the padding and fur. The library was vacant. The silence was precious, away from the wind that was cold and relentless. On Sunday, the snow had faded from view, as the sun made a U-turn and started anew. After church in Croydon, she felt quite refined, with a tolerant spirit and a peaceful mind. But the itinerary for lunch went pear-shaped and wrong, as the hostile cold wind grew excessive and strong. The last straw was the hunger that started to grow. Consequently, she knew that she had to go. She wouldn't hesitate or resist a good meal, for a Mother's Day treat had a superior appeal. The trip was improvised, planned at the brink, with inadequate time for the mothers to think. They were back to square one, and the drawing board too, deciding exactly what they should do. Kira met with her friend Zara, crestfallen and tired, but a Chinese meal was the ultimate thing they desired. "Let's not bicker or dispute," Kira said with a laugh. "Let's proceed down the road on this culinary path." Though planning was lenient and left to the end, it was sufficient magic with a very dear friend. They went to a restaurant, Pearlie's best spot, where the scent was delicious and the tea was quite hot. The meal was not only tasty, but also quite grand. The best multicultural feast in the land. To say it was inferior would be a big error. The flavors were reminiscent of joy, not of terror. Kira offered a compliment to the chef and the crew as the light at the end of the tunnel broke through. The penultimate moment of the week was a treat, with a taste of her own medicine, sugary and sweet. "7 days, 7 jackets, some new and some old, some redundant and ragged, some brave and some bold." She had reviewed her diary and recalled every scene, from the demise of the purple to the glow of the green. She wouldn't shun fashion or omit any style, for her precious collection made life worth the while. "No more dilemmas," she said with a cheer. "Fashion's itinerary is finally clear." She closed up her diary. Her story was done. "Yee-haw!" she shouted, having had so much fun.